Rachel, welcome. Rachel Singleton, thank you so much for joining me today to be a part of the Breaking Through the Void Summit. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. So we are going to be talking today about flower essences and how they can clear and refine your soul energy, and well, much more than that actually, because they work so beautifully on so many levels. And I'm absolutely delighted that you could come today, because I think these are absolutely the tools for today, you know, the medicine that we need to get us through the current environment and world that we're living in. So I've obviously been lucky enough to train with you, and that's wonderful. And I've known you for a number of years. But for those that may not know you or know of your essence range, I would love to just read very briefly your biography, just to let people know who you are, if that's okay.
Yeah,
so good. So Rachel, you've worked in the field of transformational consciousness for 18 years, and you are a specialist in flower and vibrational essences. You are also the producer of Lightbringer Essences. You are an international tutor and advanced essence trainings, founder of the Essence Makers Retreat, and the editor of the new International Flower and Vibrational Essences e-magazine, Sentire. You work with clients from around the world. You train and supervise essence producers, and you're currently writing a Wild and Sacred Medicine handbook to the Lightbringer Essences. And when you're not working, you spend all your available time with wild plants in the deep quiet of the mountains near your home, soaking up the healing energies of nature, which is possibly my my most favourite thing in the world to do if I had the time and the opportunity. So, welcome.
Thank you.
So, I wonder if we could start by, some people are very familiar with flower and plant essences, and some people with batch essences, and for some people they may be something that's completely new. So, would you be able to start by just giving us an outline of essences, a little sort of brief history, how and why they work, and I guess why they're relevant for today?
Yeah, okay. So the first flower essences really started here in the UK in the 1920s with a Harley Street physician, a very eminent physician who was not trained in alternative things, but who kind of found his way towards them. And he was called Dr. Edward Bach, or Bach. People refer to him either way. And the way that he was finding medicine was working at that time just felt to him really limited. And he'd grown up a real wild spirit who absolutely loved nature. So when he was a boy, he used to just run around, be outside, be exploring all the time, to the extent that it would get to nightfall and he was too far away from home to get back home. So he'd just curl up under a hedge and just go to sleep there and maybe stay out for 2 or 3 days. And I always loved that image of this kind of wild child who was just totally connected with nature, who then became this really sort of serious, well thought of physician. And he did amazing things. He looked into bacteria and gut flora long before anyone had thought of that. He looked into vaccination long before anyone else was thinking about that. So he was very scientifically minded and very well thought of. But what he kept finding was that there was something more, that there was something that medicine wasn't touching. So he explored homeopathy, but even that he didn't feel was quite touching what he wanted to get to. And he got to the point where he could see someone walk into his clinic and he would be able to look at them, and within minutes he would know what kind of conditions they would have before they'd even told him anything. And the way that he was picking that up was he was picking it up in terms of the very look of them, the personality type, the mannerisms, and he kind of could see that people who were, for example, of a very nervous disposition, who were always worrying about other people or themselves, or had specific kind of fears, it would show up on their face and their body, and it would come out as certain illnesses that were consistent and repetitive, and he could start to really classify that almost. And he wanted some way of being able to go in and touch that call. So this was behind what medicine was doing. Medicine was looking at those symptoms, but it wasn't going right in and saying, well, why is that person predisposed to that? Why have they got this nervousness in the first place? Or why have they got this irritability? Or why have they got this lethargic, dreamy kind of personality, whatever it might be. What was going on there? That there was that kind of core imbalance, and it was that he felt he wanted to touch. So he felt quite hemmed in when he was in London, when he was working there. So he would sometimes just go and sit in the park, but it was almost unbearable because there was this wild, free spirit in him that was almost caged in the work that he was in. And one day he realized that he needed to go back to nature for those very answers that he was looking for. And he just closed his practice. He got rid of all his stuff. He let the research go back to the other people that were helping him, and he set off and just went and walked and traveled and went back to the mountains and went back to the things that really spoke to him at a soul level. And he began to experiment with how he could work with plants, because it was flowers that were calling him. And he started to create these tinctures of flowers that were not homeopathy. They were not a pharmaceutical preparation. They were an extraction through the sun of flowers in water. And that water that contained that flower's essence, he found had incredible impact on a person. And one of the most amazing ways that he found out about this was he was walking past a plant that's quite common here in Britain, which is Himalayan balsam, also known as impatiens. And it grows all over the place, and there's all sorts of schemes here in the UK to get rid of it. You know, people go around pulling it out because it's so highly invasive. And one of the reasons it's so invasive and so successful is if you walk past that plant when it's in seed, pretty much the vibration of your air going past it, you don't even need to touch it. The seed pod will just burst open and the seeds will fly out at incredible speed. Impatiens, impatient, they're dynamic and they fire out in all directions, and more plants spring up the next year. So it had this uncontrollable fiery energy, and he recognized something of himself in there, and he worked with that essence, and it is indeed for people who have that kind of quick, fiery, irritable sort of personality, and who have the troubles that come with that. So he devised this range, which was 38 remedies, which are to this day famous all over the world. And even people who don't know about flower essences may yet have taken Rescue Remedy, which is one of his, a combination of 5 of his essences. So what essences do, or how most people see them, is that they're there as an emotional support, that they're a natural way of being able to temper parts of their personality that feel discordant, out of harmony, disruptive, that keep turning your life upside down. You know, your own reactions that feel out of control, that don't help you, that kind of sabotage you. And essences can really help to bring us back in balance. How and why is not something we scientifically can give an answer to yet. I feel that that's very close to coming. There's some amazing research being done in plants at this time, and I think those answers are very close to coming. But for me, on an instinctive and intuitive level, my sense is that when we take in that pure, pristine blossom of a flower, then we take in its life force, then that touches our own life force with a pattern that is balanced and harmonious, and it somehow reminds us of that in us. And it's like it touches our own higher frequency. Pure and exquisite. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. Absolutely does. You just cut out just for the very final part of that, but we absolutely got the essence of what you were saying. And you're right. You know, there is something quite amazing about them, and I don't know how they work, but I know you and I have both seen with ourselves and with clients just how deeply they touch people and the effect that they have. And I wondered if you would share. I know when I did my training with you, you were kind enough to share about when you first made your first essence from I think it was Angel Star, and how you found the flower and how that had an effect on you. And then I wanted to share a story of my own with one of your essences, which are amazing. I have to say the Lightbringer range is superb. So would you share that about how you made that first essence, just really how it touched you? Because I think that sums it up for me, just how essences touch people on a soul level that sometimes can't be well, it can be described, but it's when you experience that you really get how amazing they are.
Yeah, because it is kind of mystical and soulful the way that they work.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'm really happy to share that with you.
Great.
So this is going back 18-19 years, and at the time I'd been studying to become a homeopath, and I was introduced to flower essences as part of that training, and that day really changed my life. I might have gone into that training to learn about homeopathy, but I came out very clearly through the flower essence door. and from there on in, I never looked back. It was flower essences for me. And I remember the very first time I heard about flower essences, I just had this incredible sense that I'd come home, just the awareness that those beautiful flowers that there are all over the world, that everybody has access to, are more than just beautiful, that they're actually a source of healing. It really touched and really lit up something in my own soul. And in that very first moment of meeting them, a voice in me was already saying, I want to make flower essences and I want to work with flower essences. And over the next few months, I kind of followed absolutely to the letter Dr. Bach's instructions on how you make essences, and I tried to make various essences and gave them to my tutors and was like, so excited, and I didn't get any feedback, and nobody really thought anything much of them. And I thought, oh well, okay, maybe I was wrong on this deep life dream that I have. Yeah. And then I had an event happen in my own life, which was very sad and very tragic. My grandmother died, and she died in a way which was long and slow and painful and very, very drawn out and excruciating to watch, and obviously excruciating for her to experience. And for the whole family, it was really devastating. For me, it felt particularly devastating because I was very close to her, and she was always kind of my safe haven. I just really, really loved her. And in the couple of weeks after she died, I was walking down by the river in a place that I would regularly walk with our dogs at the time. It was a stunning, stunning, beautiful day. One of the requirements for making an essence is that you have this blue sky with no clouds in, which is actually very rare in the UK. But it was one of those days. It was a blue sky day. There wasn't a cloud. And it flashed through my mind, this is perfect essence making weather. And then I let that thought go. I wasn't out there to make an essence, and I wasn't in that space. And then as I came walking back by the river, just something caught my eye, and I turned and looked, and there was this tiny, tiny white flower, but there was lots of them, like a little white star. And I just stopped, and I couldn't move. I couldn't go past it. I couldn't walk away. I just was completely arrested by that flower. So tiny, so seemingly insignificant. And yet when I looked at that, it looked pure and clean and defined, and like it just knew what it was and who it was. And I felt absolutely the opposite to that at that time. I felt in a dark and confusing place. I was in my early 20s. I didn't know where I was going in life, what I was doing. I had no sense of direction, and I just felt like the absolute opposite to this beautiful, simple, modest, gorgeous little flower. And I just kind of went and grabbed some of those flowers and just held them to my heart. And I started to walk back with the dogs. And within moments, I just, everything inside just went still. And I just had this experience of complete serenity. All of the turmoil and the troubles and the things that I imagined were wrong with my world and my life just fell away, just dissolved. And I was left in this place of complete peace and complete tranquility. And I just completely slowed down. The dogs were coming back to me like, what are you doing? Are we going for a walk? So I kind of got back home with these flowers still held against me, and I was having to go out that afternoon. So I kind of picked the nearest bowl that I had and some water and just popped them in there and popped them out in the sun, thinking I really want to capture this moment, you know, essentially, and I want to have this feeling with me. I want to be able to come back to that and drink from that and take that and have that in my life and have that guide me and inform me. And as I'd been standing with the flowers in that moment when I first saw them, I had all this information come through me, like fully formed, complicated sentences, you know, not just this is a flower for whatever. It was like, this is for psychological and emotional entanglement with other people. You know, great big long sentences of information were coming through, and I'd never had that experience before. And at the same moment, I could feel my grandma beside me, you know, and again, I've never had any kind of sense of being aware of ghosts or anything like that, but I felt her presence beside me as clearly, you know, as we're here now. And so I knew something powerful was going on. And when I went up that afternoon, I was meeting up with an old friend who I'd known a long time, but who was a very, very private person. And as she was talking about some things that were troubling her. I had this kind of burning heat going down through the center of my head and down into my body. And I was able to tell her things about herself that she'd never told me, never told other people. And she was saying to me, "What is going on?" And I said, "I don't know." And it was just this strange sense of kind of being on fire and of being connected in somehow. And when I look back on that experience, I think the experience of my grandma dying, and you know, they say that at the time of death that the veil between the worlds is very thin. Yeah. And I think at that time I was peeping through, I was seeing something or getting something, and my senses were heightened. And over the next few weeks, every flower I looked at, I got this download, and it got to the point where it was actually quite exhausting. And so about 6 weeks later, I actually had to say, could I find a way, please, of turning this on and off? And in that moment, it stopped. But then whenever I wanted to look at a flower and find the information, I could access it. So it was really great to know I didn't have to just download all the time. Yeah. And then over the years, those particular flowers have shown themselves to me, and I've had what I've called the flower essence moment, where I've just had this sudden deep connection with them, and I've listened to that connection and then started to work with that plant. Yeah. But it, you know, in some ways that makes me sound like I'm special or I went through something special, but I teach people how to do this, and anyone and everyone can make essences and access that kind of consciousness within themselves and within the natural world around them. I believe it's a skill that we have as humans that we've forgotten. We've packed it away in our technological, stressful modern lives. And I think people are really craving that now and are seeking to access that, because it's a part of who we are. You know, it's this vibrant, living part of who we are.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, you know, and what I love about essences as well is the fact that when you take them, you reconnect with nature and with plants incredibly. Like I know that happened to me when I first started using essences and training in them and making them. My relationship to nature and to the world at large, really, and my relationships with others completely changed. And my connection to nature is now so strong, I don't believe that will ever go, you know. I really and I just wanted to say that in the way that you said you were getting the download about your essences, I think that's a lovely thing about your range, is your descriptions of them are often very, very clear and easy for people to relate to. And I know that you know, I had my moment, which I've shared with you before, about when we were doing our training and I read about bee orchid, which is a beautiful, beautiful plant, isn't it? I mean, really amazing. It looks like a bee, doesn't it? It's an orchid that looks like a bee. And it's when I was stuck in my void, you know, and I didn't know where to turn, and I knew I wasn't happy. I knew I wanted something more. I wanted to leave the life that I was doing in finance, and I wanted to build up my you know, practice doing health and well-being, but I didn't know how to do it. And I felt really stuck. And I remember reading your description of bee orchid, and it touched me so much that I remember being on the Underground in London, and I burst into tears in front of everyone. I thought, oh God, this is going to be embarrassing. But I literally couldn't stop, because it touched me at such a soul level, because I read it and I thought, that's me. That's exactly what I want and what I need. And I took the essence and it was amazing. And, you know, and that's happened with so many times with essences that you find one and it touches you so deeply. It's incredible. And yeah, so I'm so glad we just got to share our little experiences there, because I think that helps it really, you know, bring it alive for people. So again, I mean, I guess kind of building on that then. So how can we use essences as a conduit to the mystical and to connect with the intuitive and the sacred? How does that kind of work with them?
Well, it was interesting what you were saying there about, and because it is beautiful, your experience with the orchid, and I've heard quite a few people say that, particularly about that essence, which is about manifesting your potential in the world and feeling that at that time you're kind of, you know, you're climbing up this ladder and you're all by yourself and there's nobody there to support you, and you've just got to believe in your dream before there is a world out there to say yes. You know, come on, you can do this, is brilliant, we need you. It's that point when we have that vision inside, but we don't yet have a world that knows that it needs that vision, and it's a huge leap of faith. And you know, so that in itself is a lovely example of how an essence can kind of take us over that gap, take us over that void, you know, and help us to step into a space of power. And you know, and I often wonder, do we choose the essence, or does the essence choose us? And I think this is where the mystical comes in, you know, and for me this is something that I call resonance. If our whole universe is energy, you know, if that's the actual ultimate reality, is everything is energy, then certain frequencies resonate. And I feel that over these many years of working with essences, and I'm constantly going back to them and just sitting with them and kind of almost listening, you know, I just feel like I've got so much more to learn all the time from the plants, from the essences themselves. And I get this sense that we have this, we'll have something going on in our life, and there'll be a need there, so something that our soul starts calling to the world for, whether we're aware that we're sending out that call or not, you know. So someone can be physically in pain, or they can be emotionally in confusion, and they can be feeling disorientated, whatever it might be, and in that space there is a lack, and so their soul sends out a call for something to fill that need. And then I think we get that something then that resonates with that. So it might be a person says something or tells us something, but in the field of essences, we go and look at the essences in that space when we have some need. Then the one that is right for us will kind of stand out, you know. So you can look at a range of essences on someone's website and they have all their lovely pictures of them. And if you look at them, there'll be one or two that stand out for you. And if you look at them 2 months later, it could be completely different ones that stand out for you. And it's like they call, you know, they call you as you're calling them. And this call and answer, this resonance, I think is incredibly kind of mysterious and intuitive. And people, well, we have a tendency to want to get in the way of that, you know, to bring our heads into this and be logical or rational or scientific about this. But actually, this is part of our inheritance. Again, you know, it's the fact that we're part of the fabric of life and we're part of nature, and therefore we are beings who are in communication with everything else. And it's this subtle, deep, mysterious level of communication that I feel essences has really given me in my life and really enriched in my life. And I often feel that that's what people come looking for as well, that way back to listening to their own intuition and being able to trust their own inner voice and connect with who they are. You know, it's that real deep sense of not what we've been conditioned to think, but actually who am I below that, beneath that, behind that, and how can I live from that authentic place and be that person and bring that forward into the world? Because if we're bringing that very authentic self, our essential self, forward rather than the conditioned self, if we bring the authentic self forward, and if we all show up and the courage that it takes to do that.
Rachel, apologies, you just cut out just for the last sentence there. Could you just say the last sentence again?
Okay, so yeah, I was just saying about the the amazing potential if we all have the courage to step forward in that authentic place and be who we are in the world.
Yeah.
And maybe that most of the pain we have as human beings is not being who we are, is not expressing fully our essential self. You know, in the people I see, and I'm sure you see this as well, time and time and time again, the pain, the suffering is around, I want to be me, you know, I want to fulfill who I am, and I don't know what that is, I don't know who I am, or I don't know whether it's acceptable. And I feel essences are crucial in helping to key into that deep self, so that we can strengthen our connection with that and speak more from that place and live more from that place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings beautifully into another question I wanted to ask you, which is how we can use essences to find our way through our inner emotional landscape, rather than trying to find a way to get rid of uncomfortable emotions, which is so typical of life today, and actually how we approach medicine and health. And it's like, give me a pill to get rid of it, you know, rather than going within and kind of saying, well, I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling anxious, and you know what, maybe that's okay and it's appropriate, and how can I work with that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it'd be great to know how essences can help in that way as well.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting area, because a lot of people, if they've come to essences through rescue remedy, are used to the idea that something's going wrong, you take rescue remedy and you start to feel better. So it can set up a kind of an expectation that what essences do is they make difficult emotions go away, you know. And my understanding of all natural therapies, whether it be essences or anything, is that it doesn't impose. You know, natural therapy invites. It invites us back to a state of harmony and balance. You take something that chemically changes your body, and that can force a reaction in your body. But you take something that's very gentle, that's working with the natural systems of the body, then what you're actually doing is you're inviting and reminding the body of its innate harmony. And you're saying, here is this vibrational frequency at which, when you resonate at that, you are in harmony. And it's an invitation back to that. So sometimes a person might find that they don't necessarily immediately feel better, and that is no bad thing. Just as you were saying, you know, there's a fear, almost a phobia of having difficult emotions, you know, and we've got so many stimuli we can turn to in modern day life that can cut off our emotions. We can watch TV, we can sit at the computer, we can drink alcohol, we can load our faces with sugar, we can do all these things that will numb our emotions so that we don't have to feel them. And worst case scenario, we can take drugs and whatever else we need to do to shut away uncomfortable feelings. But an uncomfortable feeling is an indication from our whole feedback mechanism of our entire being that something is out of balance. And the more serious that and uncomfortable that emotion is, then the more serious that imbalance is. And we don't want to just switch off the part of us that's trying to say there's something wrong. We want to be listening to that, but we need to be able to listen to that in a way that's manageable and that doesn't completely overwhelm us. And for me, essences help make that dark space or that uncomfortable space manageable. So we can use essences in, you know, I sort of think of them as working in three ways. They work emotionally, they work on the mental realm, and they work on the spiritual realm. And on the emotional realm, they help us to learn to be comfortable within our own emotional landscape. So rather than run away from or compartmentalize aspects of our emotional life that we don't like, we learn that there's a power in embracing those emotions. There's a power in being able to sit in them and not react, but actually just be with them and watch them and experience them as an energy sensation going through the body without actually judging them anyway, just actually experiencing that as a physical and an emotional sensation and being with that and not getting terrified by that and not shutting down around that. So it's like they help us to hold a space with that. And there's a couple of good essences that do that, which I'll come back to in a moment. And And then on a mental level, I feel that they're almost like meditation. They help us to get a distance between our thoughts and beliefs and the quiet witnessing self that exists behind that. And when we're constantly believing all our thoughts, then we can get really quite messed up. And, you know, people often say, I don't know which voice in my head to believe. You know, it can be so confusing sometimes, especially if we're stressed, to know what to listen to in our own heads. And the thoughts can be overpowering. And a lot of the thoughts that we're having are thoughts that we learnt to have through our upbringing, through negative things that have happened to us in the past, through ways that we've developed of protecting ourselves. And they can be very negating either of ourselves or our lives or of others. And we need to learn as we mature as adults, but also as we mature as a human race, how to step back from our thoughts and get some distance from them. And again, just quietly be that witness, which leads me into the spiritual area in which I feel that essences work. And it's like that sense of them being, essences are made when a plant is at the culmination of its growth cycle. So when the blossoms are at their most pristine, some of them might be in bud, some of them are fully out, but none of them will be dying back. They'll be at their absolute pristine best, and usually in a place that's as unpolluted as possible, in an area where they're growing wild and natural. And we're really getting the plant at the point when it's at its most vulnerable. If you think about it, you know, a plant can be quite a strong thing in itself, and then it sends out this exquisite, fragile, silky petaled covering that it's like it turns itself inside out, and its most beautiful, radiant self is exposed. And at that point, it's then ready to be fertilized and to go on and to reproduce and to create other plants. But that it has to, in order to do that, it has to expose its innermost self. And it's as if those blossoms come out of nowhere. You know, you can look at something like a gorse or a rose where there's those kind of really prickly, woody stems. And then somehow out of that comes this silky, beautiful, light flower. And we're like that as well. You know, we have this potential. And I think that's what essences touch in us, particularly flower essences. It's like there's this need in us to turn ourselves inside out, to show our most beautiful, exquisite blossoming. And that in a sense, until we do that, we're not completely here as human beings. We've not completely risked all to come into being fully. And the crowning of our accomplishment is to be fully our spiritual self, to be compassionate, vulnerable, without defenses, opening our heart at one with life, accepting, trusting. You know, it's an incredibly vulnerable space. But you look at those spiritual teachers in the world today, Eckhart Tolle, the Dalai Lama, you know, there's so many that I could name who have that quality, and they are unguarded and gentle and vulnerable and beautiful, you know, and they epitomize that something that flower essences are also showing us. And so each time we take the essence, I always say to people when I give them a bottle of essences, I always say, take these essences regularly and take them until the bottle's finished, because every time you take it in, you're taking in that exquisite reminder to the inner self to become all that you can be. You're taking those drops of liquid consciousness into your being, and they're touching your consciousness and the part of you that wants to evolve into that fulfilled, beautiful, amazing human being that is here for a reason. So, you know, so their gifts, they go so deep. Yeah.
That was so beautifully described. It really was. And again, I think that leads me into what will probably be my last question, but is actually perfect. And you know, one of the things in terms of this summit, and what we're looking at is how we can move forward and how we can change the world and how we can be the best us that we can be. And that's what the world really needs right now, you know. And this is certainly the purpose for me about trying to bring you and all the other amazing speakers together to share that insight with people and to get people thinking. So And of course, in order to do that, we need to raise our consciousness. We need to step up and be who we're going to be in whatever form that comes. So I just wanted to finish by asking how we can raise our consciousness through essences. Is that something that we can do?
Yeah. So I feel from my own experience, when I look back 20 years ago to the person I was then and the person I am now, I feel like I've had a living experience over 20 years from the essences of how personally I feel like I've constantly been called to not compromise and go the easy route, but to actually really come into my truth. And there's been some key essences along the way that have really helped with that I think have helped a lot of other people as well. And maybe it would be good if I shared some of those essences so that people can also get an insight into that. So one of the favorite essences that I have for that is called Parnassus, and it's a beautiful flower that grows up in the mountains. And when I first met it, I had this kind of a sort of vision. I had this picture in my mind's eye of myself, and my auric field, my energy field was riddled with holes, big black holes all over the place, and I was leaking out my power and my light. This was very, very early on in my essence making experience, and I remember seeing that and feeling quite shocked and quite sad to see that my own energy field was in such a bad state. And then the next thing I saw was these amazing flowers coming in to fill those spaces. And Parnassus, if anyone gets a chance, do look this up on the internet, look up the images for this, because it's really beautiful. It's like this little white chalice flower, and it's exquisite. Each of the petals of it they look like they've been drawn with an artist's brush. They have these gorgeous little vein lines on them, and it has this exquisite corona of stamen at the center. It's just absolutely beautiful. It grows through a single heart-shaped leaf, one single stalk, and then there is this white, exquisite, pearlescent chalice of a cup of flower at the top of it. And as I was having this kind of image of my energy field, I then saw these lovely white, bright, radiant flowers filling all of those holes all around my energy field. And they weren't turned outwards, they were turned inwards towards me. So being pearlescent and shimmering, they catch light. So what they were doing was catching and reflecting back my own light. And the experience of that was to be standing in my own light and power and not leaking that away was intensely uncomfortable for me at that time. I felt like I wanted to run away. I felt like I wanted to leak everything away again, because that was what I was used to doing. And here was this amazing plant saying to me, you need to hold your energy, and you need to hold your power, and you need to get comfortable with being magnificent and pure and beautiful, just as all human beings are. And so whenever I've used that with people, it's just been this real sense of giving them back their own sense of beauty and magnificence and getting comfortable with that. So you don't have to keep, when people compliment you, denying it and pushing away those compliments. You don't have to play down your strengths and your power. You don't have to leak money away as soon as it comes into your life, or whatever other source of energy or power it might be. And it helps you to start to contain that and start to get used to that and break through those habits of denying yourself or sabotaging yourself. So that's been an amazing essence and an amazing example of how essences can help. And about 2 years ago, there was a new essence came in, Pyramid Orchid, which is one of the wild orchid essences, and this one kind of updates it. It takes it to a new level. So I still use Parnassus, but I find Pyramid Orchid comes up a lot now. And this essence is like a kickstart it feels like it comes from the angels. It's like they're giving you a kick up your backside and saying, come on, get on and be all you can be. It's time to stop pretending that you're not who you are. It's time to stop dithering and procrastinating and worrying about this and that. I'm just going to check in because I think that froze.
It did freeze. It did. So just that last, you were saying about, giving you a kick up the butt and saying, be everything you can be. And
Yeah, so it's that real push from the universe, like, look, we're not tolerating this anymore. You've got everything you need, you are the package, now get on and be that, you know. And it's lovely because it's so empowering. And whenever people you know, are selecting some essences for themselves and they come across that and they're so shocked when they get that, it's like, oh, so I really do have to go and be and do everything I'm here to do and be, you know. And it's lovely. It's a lovely moment. It's like that fantastic recognition that actually, yeah, I do know this. I do know why I'm here, and yeah, it's time. So yeah, I would say that's a really key essence for that.
That sounds like the essence of the summit to me. It really does. So just everyone go and buy Pyramid Essence. I know I'm going to be looking at that now. Oh, Rachel, that's amazing. We have kind of drawn to the end of our time, but you've just reminded me of everything that's amazing about essences, and you describe it so beautifully. And your range is incredible, and I really would encourage everyone to go to your website. The link is on the summit page, and just have a look and connect with the flowers. Have a look at the pictures, see what reaches out. Exactly as you said, you know, see what stands out on that page for you. And of course, there are not only your essences, some, you know, many amazing ranges, you know, local to where people might be in the US or wherever they are globally. So I would encourage everyone to just, you know, start looking at them, just tune in, and they really are incredible. And well, it certainly feels like you've captured that in your talk today. So Rachel, thank you so much. I think our recording is pretty good, given that we had a few technology challenges today. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much for being part of the summit and for sharing everything with everyone. So thanks, Rachel. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Julia.
Good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.